Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick. This is MSFS Flight Plans, and before we can get back to our mission of saving the world through simming, I think we're going to have to try to save the sim from the world first. It is no secret that the response to what was released for 2024 has not been exactly positive, which may be a bit of an understatement at this point. And I totally understand why everyone feels this way, because I was feeling it too, but those sentiments are slowly improving for me, and the main reason is because I have been flying my little fingers off trying to find some inspiring locations around the world just to keep us busy while Microsoft tries to build 2024 into something that everyone can enjoy as much as we were enjoying it 2020, and I'm sure they eventually will. I know they're hard at work trying to do it. So today I've got another mind blower for us that I will cautiously proclaim may look even better in 2024 than it did in 2020. And I have a pretty good basis of comparison because it was one of the very first flights I uploaded on this channel, which I should add has since been deleted because of the amount of nervousness and apprehension in my voice of those first videos is just unbearable to even listen to. Very cringy, as my daughters would say. So today we're in Guatemala, just inland of the Pacific coast of Central America, and we're going to check out some beautiful lakes, volcanoes, cities, small towns, all kinds of other stuff that looks really, really good here in 2024. In fact, we're going to see 10 of this country's 23 volcanoes on this trip, which should definitely give you something to look forward to for this one. And since we can do it, I don't have to hit the insert button anymore. I can just walk right up to the plane and click on the door handle. And there's Bill waiting for us inside. He's back. And I got to do a little walk around. I took off all the chocks and everything, took all the covers off. It was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I'll admit it. I'll spare you guys that, though. Okay, in we go. I got my little note card out here. Let's see if I can get this bad boy turned on. All right, I already got the fuel on. I know that's already set by default, which is nice because it wasn't before. Let's get that set. Okay, prop lever needs to be to full. Throttle's working. Is that working? Yep. Okay, condition lever's working. Everything's working so far. So, first, battery on, which is up here. Very good. That worked. We already got the prop set, and the boost pump needs to be set to on. And then just start the starter. We need avionics 1 on so we can see what's going on up there. I'll go ahead and just turn both of them on. And I cannot see our NG from here, so I'll just kind of go by sound before we introduce the fuel. We'll need to get rid of that so I can change that to GPS, because we will be flying this on autopilot. There we go. Alright, that's probably good. Let's go ahead and put the condition lever up to low. Alright, that sounds good. So far, so good with everything. Okay, what next? Generator to reset, which should bring it back to on. Very good, that took care of itself. And then turn the boost pump back to normal. Standby alternator is already on. That's great. That's interesting, that's set by default too. And takeoff trim is set. Everything else is good. Check the altimeter, and let's go ahead and just set our transponder before I forget about it over to altitude mode. Boy, I can barely see that from here. That's fine. I think it's working good enough. I can see it well enough. And yoke back. Okay, let's take a look at little NavMap real quick. There's Guatemala. So we are going to be leaving from, try to pronounce this name, I think it's Quetzaltenango. And we've got some really big mountains we're going to have to come over here initially, so we're going to come out this way a little bit to get some altitude. It looks like our leg safe altitude is 10,500, but on my test flight that was cutting a little close, so I think initially I'm going to set it to 11,000 so I don't have to listen to her telling me we're 500 feet off the deck the whole time. And look at all these volcanoes. Every one of these bookmarks is a volcano. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one's going to kind of be off in the distance, but we'll see as we're coming in for our approach. But we're going to have some nice lakes to look at here. The terrain looks really good. The trees look good. The structures, though there's no photogrammetry out here, which might be a good thing, looks really, really good. All the default buildings. And this approach here coming into Guatemala City is so cool because you kind of flap these mountains and down over the city. Really, really neat. So that's what it's going to look like. And I think the whole distance is about 102 miles, so this might be a slightly longer flight compared to some of our last few. And we'll go ahead and park that over here. I'm going to leave this up just so I can kind of eyeball where we need to be. In fact, let's look. After we come around those first volcanoes there, I can come from 11,000 down to, well, let's just say 8,500 maybe, because again, she'll start telling me I'm 500 feet from the ground, and I don't want to have to hear that the whole time. Okay, so with that in mind, my external controls aren't working, so I'm going to have to adjust this in the cockpit, which is totally cool. We'll make that 11,000 to start. 10,000. And 11,000. Okay. Check our altimeter again. That's good. GPS is set. Taxi lights on. Transponder, we already set that. Okay, I think everything's good. Let's see if the parking brakes work. That's the last thing we're going to have to check on. Oop, sounds like they worked. Great. These trees are so nice. I'm really loving the trees. Yeah, you don't really see them, but when you're right on the ground, but they're just nice. And we're moving. Great. So our starting location here is the city of Quetzaltenango, and this is their main airport called Los Altos, which means the tall ones. And you're going to see why here in just a second. And the altitude here on this strip, as you can see, is just shy of 8,000, so bear that in mind if you're going to take a naturally aspirated plane. You better pull that mix back a little bit. But thankfully the runway is pretty long. It's just over 6,000 feet, and we're probably going to need every bit of that. But this airport has been at this location since 1955, replacing an airport built in 1945 in La Esperanza, just a few miles to the west, and I don't think it exists at all anymore. I look for it over there. And they did have one incident out here that I'll mention just because it happened to one of my favorite planes. In 1998, a DC-3 crashed into these mountains we're going to fly over to our left, and only 7 of the 18 passengers survived it, which is too bad. And I wonder what they were doing flying a DC-3 out here fairly recently. So I don't know what the natural vegetation out here looks like. I'm imagining this is kind of a tropical climate, but I could be wrong about that. We're at a pretty high elevation. Well, they got some palm trees and stuff over there. I just don't know for sure, but I do like seeing trees that aren't floating in the air, that look very lifelike. And we will get a little stuttering on the ground, but I gotta tell you guys, I have got all my graphics completely maxed out, even the terrain level of detail and everything, which is not something I ever did for any flights we uploaded on this channel in 2020. So it should be able to take it, especially once you get up off the ground a little bit here. Okay, I think we're ready, so taxi lights off, landing lights on, 1 notch of flaps. Once we get up in the air, we'll engage the autopilot, yaw damper, and set our vertical speed. Alright, Bill, you ready? Why are you sitting so far from the seat there? That's cool, you get a better view. I did put some cameras in the back too, because there's going to be a few spots we're going to want to see from the other side. Did I push the condition lever up? Yep, we got full condition. We're good. And I need to see how to get into that Garmin and take off the little flight director squares there, because I'm not used to seeing that and it's kind of distracting me, but I'm sure there's a way to do it. I just never had to do it before, so I gotta figure it out. I had to turn the winds down a little bit. Up at our cruising altitude, they were at 50 knots. I don't know why. That wasn't live weather, but it was insane once we got up there. Okay, so we'll just come off the runway a little bit here, bring the flaps up, get the autopilot on, the airplane cruise control, and I'll start telling you about all the stuff going on here. Flaps up. And now I gotta figure out how to... I'm so used to just reaching for my controls. Autopilot on, nav mode on, vertical speed, and we'll come up at 1,200 feet a minute. Oh, that's the problem with this, is it's hard to... especially when the plane's moving around. Alright, we got it. 1,200.
500.
Yep, I hear you. Thanks. Let's go ahead and kill the landing lights.
500.
So I don't have any new add-ons installed for this flight, and I'm pretty sure there aren't any at this point, but this will be the first trip where I've refilled my community folder with all the permanent add-ons I used in 2020. So I'll be keeping an eye out for things like birds, power lines, tree deletes around the top of these volcanoes and things like that. Let's pull that power back a little bit. Actually, I did throw my South America mesh in here to see if it would work, because there's one spot on one of these first volcanoes that looked a little bit too smooth for my taste, so we'll see if that's working, because I bet it would fix it if it is. We'll find out. So, as I've already mentioned, we will see no less than 10 volcanoes on this trip, all classified as Holocene, which means they have all been active at some point in the current geological epoch, which started at the end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago. And a decent number of these have erupted in the last 100 years, so plenty of action out here for sure. You know, I'm also noticing the ground terrain where you can see it looks nice. It's not granulated and airbrush looking, which has been a problem in a lot of areas I've flown over. That's nice. The buildings look very believable for default buildings. Trees, of course, look amazing. And just in case you were fortunate enough to miss our original flight out here, I'll give you a quick crash course on volcanology before we get to the first one. First of all, the number one thing that I always want to know, and I bet most of you do too, when I see a volcano, is just how dangerous it has been in the past. Well, that is measured by something called the VEI, or Volcanic Explosivity Index, which I'll mention several times on this trip. And that measures things like the amount of material blown into the atmosphere, the height of the ash plume, along with some more subjective criteria ranging from, is that it? To, whoa, we're way too close. So there's a little bit of personal taste thrown in that, I think. But to put all that into more relatable perspectives, most of the sputtering flows that we see in places like Hawaii are typically a 0 or 1 on the VEI scale, while the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens was a 4, with 1/4 of a cubic kilometer of material blasted in the atmosphere on that one. But those are just babies on the grand scheme of things. When Mount Tambora, which I mentioned on our last flight, the one in Indonesia anyway, when that thing blew itself to bits in 1815, that was estimated to have been around a 7 on the VEI. And I'll mention that one again later. And the last time the Yellowstone supervolcano got sick and tired of doing nothing, which was around 640,000 years ago, it would have scored itself an astounding 8 on the VEI, tossing around 1,000 cubic kilometers of earth from its guts and leaving a crater roughly 45 miles across, which unfortunately you really can't see today, although I think the whole park is probably right in the middle of it nowadays. And the next time that puppy puts on a show, scientists believe it will render all of North America uninhabitable for a very long time. So maybe picking up that second home in Australia isn't such a bad idea after all. Or maybe down in the Andes. That'd be cool too. We need to get down there and check that out. That looked great in 2020. I haven't flown out there at all yet. But even Old Yeller doesn't hold the crown for destructive power. That title goes to the Wawa Springs caldera in Utah, not too far from Yellowstone. Its last eruption 30 million years ago is estimated to have been 5 times bigger than the Yellowstone blast, leaving a layer of ash across most of what's now the United States that was 2 miles thick. And that one was second only in energy release to the asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs, which wasn't too far from here, as a matter of fact. Right up on the tip of the Yucatan, roughly. There's our airport that we left from. I feel like there may be a few too many trees out here. So one of the volcanoes I'm going to tell you about, because I don't think we're going to get a good view. We're going to come around the side of this one. I'm going to mention that one, so just kind of take a look at it now. And I don't remember, we'll look at all this on a little NavMap at the end so you can see what it looks like in real life, but I don't remember that having so many trees on it, so I'm guessing the volcano tree delete is not working at this point. But fortunately, the Wawa volcano, unlike Yellowstone, has been declared extinct, so don't lose any sleep about that one. You can lose all your sleep about Yellowstone. Look at these fields, those look really good. Yeah, they do. They've got some relief to them, which is a nice touch. And by the way, I had mentioned the oversaturation I was seeing in some of the other flights. I did go into my... If you have an NVIDIA card, you can adjust the effects on that. And I dialed the saturation back a bit, and this does look a lot more natural. So if you have an NVIDIA card and it looks like it's too bright or oversaturated, that may be the problem. So there's Quetzaltenango over there again to our left. Population roughly 180,000. And by the time the Spanish arrived in the 1520s, it is believed the region had already been populated for roughly 300 years by the Mayans, who called it the City Under the 10 Mountains. And I bet you can't guess why. Boy, if I didn't know any better, I would think that's photogrammetry. That looks that good. I just don't know what's supposed to be down in real life, but that looks really good. Today's name, if you're curious, is far less cool than City Under the 10 Mountains. It translates to City of the Quetzal Bird. Okay, so let's see some volcanoes. The first one there, just to the south of the city, which is right over here, is called Volcán de Cerro Quemado, which means Volcano of the Burned Hill. And once we get a little bit closer, I think this is probably as good as it's going to get. You can see that it's quite appropriate because, well, this should be a big ash heap. They got too many trees in there, I think, but this is really just a big ash pile right now. Left over from the last eruption. And just to the other side of that is 2 more peaks that we can only see the taller one from here, the one right in front of us, because the other one's right behind it. But this one here, dead ahead, is Volcán Santa Maria, and the little one behind it is Santiaguito. And Santa Maria has erupted 4 times since 1902, with all of those rating at least a 3 on the VEI scale, which is not a weak eruption. And the one in 1902 scored a very impressive 6, killing around 2,500 people, which is not impressive. And you'll see once we come around the back of it, the whole back side of the mountain is blown off, which is where the other little guy sprouted himself. So the second volcano back behind it came up after that side of the mountain fell off in 1902. And it's just kind of been continuously smoldering for the last century or so, the little one. And I'm really hoping that the modders will get a hold of some of these active sites and do them up like we saw in that World on Fire flight that we took a few months ago over Stromboli. If you haven't seen that one yet, go back and check it out, because it's freaking awesome. We flew it at night. There was volcanoes splattering up out of the top of it. And if it can be done in 2020, I'm sure they can probably do it in 2024. At least some smoke and stuff coming out of the active ones. Look at this scene here. Look at that. That is cool. That lower layer of clouds down there, that is amazing. Looks really, really neat. And don't worry about not being able to see anything, because we're going to come back around and head towards the south here. Okay, so this is what I thought might look better with the mesh. And it's still pretty rounded off. That's not what it looks like in real life. We'll check it out at the end. You can see a little bit of texturing here, so maybe it did do something. Just not enough of a difference that I would know if the mesh pack is working. And it looks like we got a little bit of a map seam right here, because you can see the color changes. Okay, so let's prepare to come down to 8,000 feet. Well, let's start coming down to 8,000 feet. Because we don't need to be this high again. 9,000. Boy, I'm really having a hard time seeing that. If I had my external controls, that would be a lot better. And vertical speed, I can't even see which one of those is the yaw damper, so I'm not going to mess with it. And down, negative 100. We'll come down at, I think that says 800, maybe 900. Alright, just keep an eye on our airspeed. Another thing I noticed on this trip versus going back and watching that first flight, which I just really can't reiterate how painful that was. All you guys that think I talk way too fast now, which I do, I wish I could let you hear one of those, which I never would. I hope nobody recorded one of those. It's just so bad. It's hard to listen to it. I don't know how I got myself to talk so slow. But when I was watching that, they had a lot of those rivers that are just so badly drawn. And that area looked great, really. It looked good. All the terrain looked great, but the rivers were really bad. So bad they jumped out at you. Looked like they were actually running uphill. I didn't notice any of those on this one, although I didn't really notice any rivers, so we'll try to kind of keep an eye out for that. How's this side look? Well, that looks a little bit better. Still a little bit fuzzy and flat, but you can definitely see some relief there. Not too bad. Not too bad. Some of these others up ahead are going to look really, really good. Look at this thing here. This is just a regular old mountain, by the way. That one's not a volcano, but it looks really cool. So volcanoes like Simmers come in all shapes and sizes. The ones we'll be enjoying today are known as composite or stratovolcanoes. And you can pick these guys out of a crowd because they have these steeper looking slopes versus the other types, usually coming up to a tiny little point until they blast it off and start forming another one. Other famous stratos you've probably flown past in the sim at one point or another: Mount Fuji near Tokyo, good old Rainier in Washington State, and Mount Shasta in California. Only one of which we've toured on this channel, which would be Shasta. And we did fly by that on our Shasta and Weed flight. But we'll most certainly get around to all of them eventually, God willing. Wonder what that is. Look at that little thing opened up down there. I think this looks fantastic. It really does. And you can see here in 2020, where there were open spots in the mountain, it was just flat. Once we come around, you'll see that that actually has a little bit of texture too, which is really nice. That looks great. Really nice, and I love these clouds here. Okay, moving along with volcanoes. Cinder cone volcanoes look more like squat versions of these stratos that we're seeing out here, rarely getting more than 1,000 feet above the surrounding terrain. And we've got quite a few of those in the western U.S. in particular. As you head around Colorado, New Mexico, I think they have some out there, big volcano fields, those short little volcanoes everywhere. And those didn't really look that good in 2020. I flew out there, I thought about taking a flight. They didn't look great, so maybe that'll be an improvement for this new sim too. And then we've got the shield volcanoes, named after their long sloping sides, very similar to an actual shield. And unlike these really energetic eruptions that these stratovolcanoes have out here, the shields usually produce large, slow-moving flows of magma that spread out in all directions. Which is not the same thing as MAGA. I want to be clear about that. You know what? I bet I could make a fortune if I started making magma hats that look just like MAGA hats, with the red fabric and the white writing on them. One of you guys with a screen printer in your garage, please make me a magma hat. I'd really be the talk of the town wearing something like that here in Jacksonville. The largest active volcanoes in the world are of the shield variety. And Mauna Loa out in Hawaii is the largest and most active, also a shield. And we've toured that one here on the channel, as a matter of fact. How's everything looking down there? Just as good as everything else. And lastly, we've got lava domes, which are the weak little sissies of the volcano world. They're basically just little heaps of cooled lava that don't have enough energy to get very far. And you can often find those down in the craters of formerly explosive volcanoes that are taking a bit of a breather. If you look down inside Mount St. Helens, that's what that's down there now, a lava dome. Look at this. Oh, fantastic. Really just great. Okay, up next, right over here, which we'll get a better look at once we come around, is Volcan San Pedro, and that baby peaks out at around 10,000 feet, and it's known as a Pleistocene volcano, meaning it has not erupted in our current geological era, but was active in the one just prior. So it's been at least 12,000 years or so since that one was active. So the coastline from here, it's about 30 miles. You can't really see it now because of the clouds. If there weren't as many, I bet you could see it perfectly fine, and it really doesn't start to pick up in terrain until you get about 20 miles inland, or about maybe 7 or 8 miles from here, which on a clear day must just look incredible. Even here looks good. I like those clouds being out there. Okay, a few quick announcements while we head to our next spot. If you haven't seen it already, I just posted a video about how to integrate our flight plans from Little NavMap into 2024. So now if you want to take any of these flights yourself, or even any of our 2020 flights for that matter, you can click on the flight plan link in the video description, download it, bring it into Little NavMap, and load it into the sim. So in other words, even if you go back and watch a 2020 video and you want to see what it looks like in 2024, that same link will get into the sim the same way. Just watch that tutorial video for Little NavMap, it'll show you how to do it. And if you have no idea how to use Little NavMap, I covered all the basics of that application in there too. Everything you need to know in just one relatively short video, which I'm sure a lot of people will find very handy. I had 3 videos before. I condensed them all down into one that'll tell you everything. And our bookmark file will also be in the video description, so you can bring in all those into Little NavMap if you don't want to have to go back and label everything yourself, which I'm sure nobody wants to do. And finally, the link to our Discord server will also be in there. Aside from enjoying one heck of an awesome simming community, you'll want to hop in there to submit a flight for our quarterly flight plan competition. And I can't recall if we flew any suggestions for this quarter in 2020, but if we did, I apologize to whoever submitted those, but we will probably limit this competition to 2024 recommendations, because I really need you guys to help me find these good-looking spots. I can't tell you how many different areas I've checked out so far, but what I can tell you is that most of them don't look great yet. And as I mentioned in that Indonesia flight, I'm going to do everything I can to keep supplying you guys with cool things to see while Asobo and Microsoft clean up the rest of the world here in 2024. So let me know if you found a cool spot. Just hop on the Discord server, go to the Suggest a Flight section over to the left. At the end of the quarter, I'll pick my top 4 flights that were recommended by you guys, and we'll vote as a sim community on the best. And the winner will receive a $50 gift card to the sim vendor of your choice. Alright, this is one of my favorite parts of this trip here. We're going to cruise out over the exceptionally beautiful Lake Atitlan and soak that in for a few minutes before we head back towards the southeast to see some more volcanoes. So there's San Pedro over there to the right. This thing is recognized as the deepest in all of Central America, getting down to over 1,100 feet, which actually makes it the deepest in all of South America too, if you want to throw that in there. Lake Titicaca, which we've also toured, is the king down there, but it only goes down to 922 feet and is way, way bigger than this one in terms of surface area. And I don't know what it is about really deep lakes, but they always give me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. I just don't like knowing there's that much space underneath me if I can't see it. And if there's a dam involved, there's a good chance I might have a full-blown panic attack. Which is kind of weird because you guys know how much I like dam spotting here in the sim. That is gorgeous. Look at that! In 2020, in that flight I took, also the shorelines here, despite it looking good otherwise, had a lot of that stuff where those white waves were kind of up the side. I'm not seeing any of that here. That's a nice, crisp coastline. We even got some boats down there. You guys want to know another cool fact about this lake? I got a real cool one for you. Of course you want to know it. You want to know, Will? Oh, yeah, you do. Don't act like you don't want to know it. This thing formed roughly 2 million years ago when the caldera of an ancient super volcano collapsed in on itself. How cool is that? But since this whole area is obviously still very active, they do have quite a few earthquakes out here, and not the gentle variety either. In 1976, they had one that registered a magnitude 7.5, which killed 25,000 people. And they said it split the bottom of this lake open, and the water level dropped over 6 feet in the course of just a few weeks. Which kind of makes you wonder where all the water went, right? They didn't mention that, but I definitely would like to know. And if you think this looks good here in the sim, apparently it ain't too shabby in real life either. Many people more qualified than me to make such claims have designated it the most beautiful lake in the world. And I believe it. Oh, this just looks amazing. And I'm really glad there weren't any low clouds here, because they'd probably be... We got a little one right over there at the lake, but we can see all of it here. This looks really, really cool. So let me hop over the site here, and I'll tell you about this little town over to the right. See if that camera's working. It is, cool. See that guy right over there? Man, that looks amazing too. Look at that. Wow. That is just awesome. So that town is called Santiago Atitlan. And I was reading that there's quite a bit of violence down there, some rising to the level of what has been called massacres during the country's civil war, which went on for 36 years from 1960 to the 1990s. But they said that a lot of civilians got shot up by the government and stuff. They executed some leader of the Catholic Church out there. That looks just incredible. Look at that. Awesome. And then over to our right, we got 2 more volcanoes. We just got a little peek at one. The closest one to us here is Toliman, and currently dormant. And the larger one just behind it to the south is Volcan de Atitlan. And that one is still classified as active, but hasn't had a confirmed eruption since 1853. And it's like right behind it. We'll see when we come around to the side. But when it did erupt in 1853, it did score a respectable 3 on the VEI scale, which isn't a 6 like that one back there that we saw, but that's pretty good, which is probably why half the mountain's not blown off. I wonder how high it needs to get to where it really just sheds off. Well, Helen's was a 4, and that blew its side off. Look at this lake. That shoreline is perfect, it really is. And I bet if I had the wind turned up a little bit more... I mean, I turned it way, way down, it was so high. I bet that thing would be whipping around like crazy. So if any of you are really hungry for 50 of my dollars to burn on that new plane that you've been eyeballing, I'll give you a little heads up about some spots that might be worthy of a flight plan submission that I have not checked out yet. If you just keep heading south from here along the Pacific coast, pretty much all the way down to the border with Costa Rica, I saw all kinds of really cool looking natural features on the satellite map. A lot of big volcanic lakes and things like that. It was neat. I just checked them out myself, but I'll let you guys take a crack at them first if you want to head down there and see how it looks. Can we see the volcano behind it? Yep, once that wind comes back up, we should be able to see it. Will, can you see it? Will? See the volcano? There it is. Well, that one didn't have the trees. They're kind of all the way to the top. I don't think that add-on's working. Not yet. And just to let you know the kind of things I typically want to see before I make a determination about whether or not it's something that's going to be just okay or is truly mind-blowing and worthy of loading up here on the channel. Well, the bar was much higher back in 2020, but I've had to lower it a bit for now, for 2024. I don't like seeing huge patches of flat photographic trees, and there is a lot of that right now in 2024, way more than we saw in 2020, so look for nice, lush, and complete vegetation. I like a lot of good texturing on the mountains, if there's any exposed ground or cliffs, none of that rounded off stuff like we just saw. And there was a lot of that in 2022, which is one thing that has definitely improved for most areas that I've flown over in 2024. Look at these clouds here. Oh, God, I love it. And you know what? I need to get out to PNG too. But the satellite coverage everywhere is just bad. The default satellite coverage with all the maps, it's pretty bad. It's not good in PNG, which is why it really struggled, I think, in 2020. And if someone can find a photogrammetry city that looks as good as places like San Francisco did in 2020, or Turin, Lubbock, Texas looked amazing, Ocala here in Florida, Key West, that would probably be an immediate qualification, because so far I haven't seen anything even remotely close to the best of the cities in 2020. Cardiff and Wales also looked amazing. Liverpool looked really good. And I've even been assaulted by a few keyboard warriors over the past couple weeks who think I'm nuts for saying 2020 looked better. If anyone doubts me on that, just go back and watch our flights over any of those areas, and then fly them again in 2024. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And really look at the ground. I mean, it is a stark difference, and not a good one at this point. But again, we are still in the early days of the new sim. They had 4 years to get everything looking like that in 2020. We're just barely a week into this. So I have confidence more and more of the really nice looking stuff will start popping up as we go along. Until then, we'll just be on a worldwide scavenger hunt to find gems like this area. And I'm actually really starting to enjoy that, to be honest with you guys. After flying around and crying into my keyboard for 3 hours and then finding a place like this, it's really an incredible feeling. Kind of like when I finally found the perfect slime recipe with my kids after clogging up my pipes with 20 gallons of Elmer's glue. It's truly an indescribable kind of satisfaction. Heck, I might have used more than 20 gallons. That stuff is hard to make, to get it just right. Those online recipes usually make it a little too sticky. Any of you with kids probably already know that. Okay, how about some more volcanoes? Up next, which we are going to circle around from this direction over here, and then come to the north, is Volcán de Fuego, or the Volcano of Fire, and then the smaller Atitlan just to the north. And the taller one of those two here, which is Fuego, that thing is a freaking beast. It towers to over 12,000 feet. Are we pointing at the right one? Yeah, that's it. Okay. And it's definitely the tallest one around here. 12,000 feet, erupted over 20 times since 1900, and the current eruption has been going on for over 20 years, which again, would be just so cool if we could see some smoke coming out of that. But that's about as awesome as it gets. And I think just looking at this, I can already see the trees are going up at the top. I think we're going to get some nice looking ravines and stuff coming down that, but I'll hold my breath. We'll see once we get out there. And then living in its shadow back behind it, both literally and figuratively, is little old Quetzaltenango. And that thing hasn't done much since the 1970s. And it sounds like that one was a total snooze fest when it did erupt. It hardly got a single point on the board for the VEI score. Not cool at all. So as far as my external panels go, I'd asked some of the guys on our Discord server about that because he said that his multi-panel was working. It's one of those Saytech/Logitech panels. I've got the, I think they call it the multi-function panel, which has all my autopilot stuff on it, and then I also have to my right my radio panel. I haven't gotten either of them to work. They're not showing up in the sim or anything, and I don't really know what to do. It looked like there were some drivers to install, but I did install those, and it doesn't seem to be working. So if you guys have those, and if anyone has got them to work yet, I would really like to be able to do that because it's got a nice big LED display on it, and I can see things like our altitude and vertical speed, which is really hard for me even with my glasses on to see in here. So let me know if you have those and you have figured out how to get them to work. That would be great. Let's hop in the back again and check out these cameras, see how it's looking. Oh, gotta click on this screen first. There we go. So I'm guessing over here that's probably the ocean, because that's about how far it would be. The clouds are just kind of blocking the coastline there. Yeah, I feel like the color saturation has definitely toned down quite a bit with that. Oh, and by the way, guys, someone notified me in the comments of our recent vid about Little NavMap. I talked about getting Mapbox to see the satellite image in Little NavMap, which we'll take another look at again at the end. But he said you can get a free version on Google that you don't need to pay for, because with Mapbox, you need to figure out how to get it, pay for it, and then install the thing, which again, I don't think was all that difficult. That looks so cool. But if you want the link to that, I did not try installing it. I was reading some guys that were reviewing it on the forums. They said it worked great, so based on what they were saying, it works. But just let me know. Hop on Discord, let me know. Drop me a comment in YouTube, let me know. I'll send you the link for that, or I'll post it. So if you want to try it out, you can. Wow, wow, wow. I wonder why there's a difference in the tree height. See that from here to here? Okay, let's see how these little... That looks real good. That's nice. Look at that. Look at that down there. Yep, it's got relief to it, not smoothed out. Very nice. Loving it. So this is Fuego here. This is the big boy, 12,000 feet. Yeah, that's amazing. That looks really good. Please tell me there's going to be a lot more of that up at the top here. And you know, I didn't really look on the satellite map to see how high the trees go, but even up there you can see... Oh, even... Well, I can't look under the wing now. But even the one back behind it there doesn't have trees all the way at the top. That looks cool. Alright, I gotta climb back up front here. That's a better view anyway. A little bit smooth. A little bit smooth up there. But we do have some texturing here. Alright, not bad. Not bad. Overall, again, the area looks pretty amazing. I'm not sure what's going up with the shorter trees here. Going on the shorter trees, that's fine. But pretty good. Pretty good. Worthy of an upload. Worthy of checking out, for sure. I just can't believe I can get the... And you know what else I've noticed about this? Normally in 2020, if you max out the terrain level of detail and you're in an area and have a computer that can handle it, I mean, as far as you can see, you'll see the trees and everything popping up. But even with it maxed out here, I'll notice, like, if we kept flying towards this, which we won't because we're going to come up here, it would get more detailed as we're getting closer. So I think it's still throttling that just a little bit, which is fine for this. But if it was really clear, there was no haze, it would look a little weird because everything over there would still look totally naked with the terrain level of detail maxed out, which seems odd. Okay, so that next little pointer there right in front of us off to the left side of the glare shield is Volcan de Agua, Volcano of Water, sitting right across the valley from Fuego here. And despite her impressive profile, she's even more tame than Fire Mountain's little brother back behind it there. Also silent since the Pleistocene period, with no known eruptions for at least 12,000 years, but man, does it look cool. Alright, what do we got down here? Oh yeah, yep, that looks nice. Real nice. Real nice. Only complaint is whatever's going on with the tree heights there. A little bit of airbrushing there, but see, this is the kind of stuff that they're just throwing in here and there. Where you can see that texturing of the cliffs. Really liking that. You can see it up there too really well. Can we get... Let me see if I can get under the window and see that. Yeah, that looks good. I like it. So you might think this one over here in front of us, Agua, got its name because of its chill demeanor, but that was actually given after a catastrophic mudslide on September 11th of 1541. An infamous date for a number of reasons. And that completely destroyed the first Spanish capital out here called Ciudad Vieja. An event that I have to imagine was a real tragedy for everyone but the surviving indigenous population that had either been enslaved or treated to the luxury of forced marriages in the decades leading up to that. Is that a town or what is that? You can't tell if it's a town because it's got to be a town, I would think. Yeah, that looks like a town, but it looks different than the others. But look at that thing. That looks good too. Really, really good. By the way, the guy from Sim had sent me a comment on our YouTube video over to Indonesia. I was talking about all the swirls on the helicopter. And some of you guys that fly helicopters in real life said the swirls are accurate, and they really do look that bad, but I had the doors taken off, and if you put the doors back on, the ones down the wheel well that I was showing you really do look pretty good, but when we were outside the helicopter there at the end, I was showing you how over-exaggerated they were. And the guy from Sim was like, yeah, I'm aware of it. It's going to get fixed, which I figured would probably be exactly the case. They look good down the footwell, and even in front of us with the fingerprints and all that, very lifelike, but if you throw those doors back on, if you've been in the 500D, you know what I'm talking about. They're really big and thick and pixelated. But it's getting worked on. Getting worked on. Everything will be up to snuff real soon here, I think. So on that Indonesia flight that we just took, I alluded to the destruction of Mount Tambora, which wasn't far from there, but I couldn't recall the precise details of that, so I figured I'd dig back into that for this as a little supplement to this flight, since we're looking at all these volcanoes. So I went back and looked up the most violent eruptions in recorded history, so I could share that with you guys as we head into Guatemala City here, and I'll break it down into 3 categories for us because the causes of the fatalities are different for each one, and the number of deaths is substantially different too. The most lives lost in the immediate vicinity of an eruption was over at Mount Pelée in Martinique, which also looked pretty good in 2020. I haven't flown over yet in 2024. In fact, I had planned to take a trip out there. We never got around to it, though. And that one was in 1902 and killed nearly 30,000 people, almost all of them succumbing to the dreaded pyroclastic flows roaring down the sides of that mountain. And it's not a really big island either. The volcano's up on the northern end of it, but I'm sure it just swamped the whole island in that pyroclastic flow. And then in 1883, for our next category, also mentioned on the last flight, was Krakatoa, also out in Indonesia, which literally blew itself out of existence, creating a tsunami that killed an estimated 36,000 people. And that would also go down in history as the loudest natural sound ever produced. It was heard by people over 3,000 miles away who reported that they thought they heard something like a cannon being fired from a nearby ship. 3,000 miles away. And if you look at Krakatoa today on a satellite map, you can see it's already starting to rebuild itself, so maybe it's eventually going to make a run at its own volume record sometime in the, hopefully, very distant future. Oh, I love this. It just looks so cool. Okay, we may be cutting it a little bit close here. We'll just keep an eye on that. If I have to take the autopilot off, that's fine. And then finally we've got Mount Tambora. As I mentioned before, that thing removed a mile of its own elevation when it exploded in 1815. And I read the fatalities from that could be anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000, and not just in the direct vicinity. In fact, most of it was worldwide. That thing blew so much ash up into the air that it caused a couple of years of volcanic winters, which led to all kinds of global crop failures, and starvation was the cause of death for people all over the world that just couldn't eat enough once it became winter for a couple of years. And what scares me about all that is that we haven't had a big eruption like that really anywhere in quite a while, so we're probably overdue for something like that, unfortunately. Hopefully it won't be in my lifetime, or my kids or grandkids. After that, I'll be too dead to think about it. I've been trying to convince my wife to let me dig a bunker in the backyard for years now. I'm a bit of a prepper at heart, so I've been warning her about all kinds of potential calamities, any of which would make a nice bunker a very prudent addition to our home. But so far, she's not all that interested. I can tell you one thing, though. Someone is going to hear a lot of I told you so's we wind up having to bug out, and I have warned my wife about that, so I'm sure she's just waiting for it. So we're going to come across the northern fringe of Guatemala City here, and then turn south towards the one big runway at the main airport of La Aurora International. And again, this city is not photogrammetry. I'm glad we cleared that mountain, because I think that was the highest one between here and there. But it looks really good despite not being photogrammetry, in my opinion. And since the structures aren't super accurate, and considering this is already going to be a pretty long flight, we'll forego a detailed city tour on this one. If they ever model it in PG, maybe we'll come back out and do a helicopter tour, because it's really a stunning location. And again, there is an ILS approach if you come in from the south. We're going to be heading in from the north, so we're just going to hand fly it. And the runway elevation for this one about 3,000 feet lower than our departure airport, so it's going to be 5,000, and once we get over this mountain, I'm going to drop this down another 500 feet to 7,500. And that should be good, bringing us in for final. But I'll give you some general information about the city while we're taking it all in. This is the capital city for Guatemala. Also the largest in terms of population, with around 3 million in the metro area as of 2023. Look at that stuff there. When you get real close, you can tell it's default stuff. Now this is cool. Watch, we're going to come over here and the whole city is just going to be kind of out in this big basin here. Really, really neat. We're going to come up this way a little bit as we come onto our runway heading. And people have been living out here for quite a while. It was the site of the Mayan city of Kamen al-Juyu, which was first inhabited around 1500 BC, making it significantly older than any of the Incan or Aztec cities, not just out here, but anywhere. And as a Mayan population center, it enjoyed peak prosperity around 300 BC thanks to a very lucrative obsidian trade. I'm sure because of all the volcanoes that pump out a lot of that stuff. But by 300 AD, all signs of life vanished. And nobody really knows why. Big mystery. And then, of course, the Spanish started rolling in the 15 and 1600s, and it has been completely destroyed by earthquakes on numerous occasions since then. But the earliest history I could find about La Aurora, the airport we're coming into, said that it was used during World War II by the United States, naturally, mainly for submarine patrols along the coastlines of Central America, during which time they called it Guatemala City Air Base. So we're going to take a turn towards the east and then a turn towards the south, and once we do that, directly across the other end of the runway, we should be able to see Volcan Pacaya, rounding out our volcano tour at number 10. And she's also pretty tame. Can we see it yet? No, it's behind Will's head. We'll see it fine in just a second. Although designated as currently active, she hasn't done much in quite some time. But I read that it did show some signs of life back in 2021, I think, which didn't sound particularly impressive. And the elevation for that one is around 8,500 feet. So upcoming locations. We have got Hawaii. We'll definitely take that one. I checked it out. The northern islands, the big northern island, not the big island, but the big northern island looks really good. Got some great looking cliffs out there. But you know, the ground terrain doesn't look great, and it didn't look great in 2020 either, which is just too bad. If you saw our Saving Hawaii flight, I tried to put as much lipstick on that pig as I possibly could. The ground still looks just as bad where you can see it as it did in 2020, but the cliffs up in that area and the canyons look really amazing, so we'll check that out. I've had some folks say the Amazon looks pretty cool, which would be neat to take a bush trip flight. Of course, we can't fly the whole thing. It would take us all year to do it, but I'll see if we can find a couple interesting spots out there. Check out this city as we come around. So let's get that down to 7,500. Check out our barrel again. Looking good. Vertical speed goes down. We'll just get there real quick. Chinese rainforest. Some folks were saying there are some wonderful looking rainforest in southeastern China, I think. I've never flown out there, so I can't wait to see that. Someone has requested a Route 66 tour, which I think would be really, really neat. Again, that'd probably be pretty long. We'd want to take it low and slow, but if we can find any neat looking cities along that, that'd be cool. Of course, it goes through some great looking landscape. And then Yosemite Valley, which is what we created our little pseudo flight plan for in that little NavMap tutorial video. We'll check that out too. I did fly out there. A lot of photographic trees, but man, does it look better. We took that last time in the Bronco, and I had an add-on for it, which improved a lot of the rock texturing in the cliffs. Now you don't need an add-on. All of them look really, really good, save for the photographic trees. But we'll probably check that out too, because it just looks so much better than the default in 2020. And then land over there at Lee Vining. How cool is this? And there's Pacaya off there in the distance. Okay, there's our runway. So I'm going to take the autopilot off once we get lined up all the way there. I'll just take it off now because we've got to cut the throttle back some. Alright, where's the autopilot button? There she is. Okay, slow way down so we can get the flaps out. Get our landing lights back on. Oh, look at that. Look how the clouds are just kind of sitting over there. And you know, this may even be a modded up airport. It's the biggest one anywhere around here. We'll see as we get closer. And I can tell as I move my head around that the frame rates are still really high. At least above 30, I would say. Which is great. But look at what an incredible area this is. Wow, what a neat looking city. Really, really cool. Okay, let's trim that bad boy up some. And I feel like maybe the pappies aren't working quite right because they always seem to say that I'm high. I know I'm high now, but I feel like they're saying we're high, even when we're probably not. Okay, one notch of flaps. How's our wind looking on a little NavMap? Alright, we got about a 4-knot wind coming from 132, which should be over my right shoulder. 2 notches of flaps. So we'll just kind of plan on that wind blowing us over a little bit. Keep that throttle down. Let's see if those pappies change. Yeah, that doesn't look like a modded up airport. But the city does look good. Look at the grass down in those fields and stuff. Real nice. So I hope you guys will check this one out. Definitely one of the best of the last at least dozen flights I've taken. A couple areas you don't want to go see. Copenhagen, really, really bad. Just off the coastline. I don't know what. There's like the mountains coming up out of the water. I was hoping that would look good. The performance was great. And the only reason we never took that in 2020 is because the stuttering was so bad. I just couldn't fly it. No problems with the performance. Unfortunately, the photogrammetry is not great. And then it's got whatever's going on out there in the water. See, what do you guys think here? Should the Pappies be giving me some red at this point? I feel like they should. At least one red light. But they're not. See on the left of the runway there? Let's see, what are some other spots? Pretty much any of the cities, unfortunately, just not looking good. And if you don't believe me again, go check out pick any flight from 2020 where we flew over a city, and then go fly it again in 2024. Watch the video, pay close attention to the ground, fly it in 2024. You'll see it's not great. You'll see it's not great, but it's going to get better. I'm confident. Until then, we're just going to keep finding these wonderful... Look, see, it's still... Is it going to turn red at all? What if I just... There we go. We got a red light. Alright, let me just focus on getting down on the ground here. Got the throttle. We gotta get down these taxiways anyhow. And we're down. Okay, so we'll pull over real quick, do a quick little satellite map tour. Again, if you want to fly just like we are, check out the link in the video description, bring in a little NavMap, watch the tutorial if you don't know how to do it, and you can fly it just like this. Flaps up. Well, that's kind of neat. We got like a little speed wobble. I probably had the brakes on too much there. That never happened in 2020. That's cool. Alright, so let's go gentle brakes. I mean, I gotta slow down some here. Slow down, man. So if I go full brakes, it starts doing the waddle like that. That's cool. That's cool. Alright, let's just kind of get over this way. I can't tell what's a taxiway and what's not. Oh, there's one. Yeah, my brakes are weak in this. I may need to change my settings of my pedals. That's full brakes. And going at this speed, I should be just slamming my face on the glare sheet, I would think. I don't know if that's a taxiway. We're just pulling over anyway. Yep, that's definitely not a modded up airport, I wouldn't think, which is... Stop, plane, stop. Okay, we'll cut the fuel. Parking brake on. Landing lights off. Let's check this out. Let's check it out. See what we got going on here. Alright, tail off. Let me get that to stop real quick, because that's going to be really annoying. Thank you. And take the centering off. Alright, so here's Quetzaltenango. So I think that DC-3 crashed somewhere around here. They said they had some bad weather too, unless it was down on this side. But I'm guessing it was probably over here because that's where... Well, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know which direction they would come from. But whatever. So here's the one that was the mud volcano, and yeah, you can see there's virtually no trees on top of that. That did not look real accurate in the sim. I mean, you could tell it was bald on the top, but that didn't look quite right. And look at this thing. So you can see in real life, that is very, very textured. That should have been not as smooth as it was. But I don't recall what that looked like in 2020, but if the mesh pack was working, I'm thinking at least this area here would have looked a lot more like that. Yeah, it was just totally rounded off. That's alright. That's alright. We're moving in the right direction here. And then we came over here to these guys. There's San Pedro, which has not erupted in the last 12,000 years at least. And here's Lake Atitlan. 1,100 feet deep. That is really deep. And if this was the crater of a big volcano... Okay, so you can kind of see, I mean, this would have been the rim of the super volcano, I guess, right? Which has since just formed these smaller volcanoes down here, but that was almost 2 million years ago when that happened. But that's cool. I wonder if anyone's been down to the bottom of it. I'm sure they have. And then here's that city where they had all the violence during the Civil Wars, which looked amazing. That little view out of the back window down there was just incredible. Looked so cool. And then here's Tomilan and Atitlan. Both of those look pretty good. This is the one that did have the trees missing from the top, but I think in real life it would probably go down a little further, but look at this. I didn't go look at the Bing map. I do have the map enhancement installed, by the way, and I'm having trouble telling if it's making a difference in most areas, because if you change it while you're flying around, which it'll let you do to like a Google map, you can see the tiles start changing, and that's not happening. So I don't know if it's working at all yet. We'll see. Then we came down here to... Oh, here's the big boy. Volcán de Fuego, of fire. You know, that actually looked pretty accurate. There were some textures up here on the top, but again, because it's smoldering, it does get a little bit blurry over here, so that may have just been an artifact depending on the Bing map. I mean, if the smoke was coming this way, you wouldn't be able to get the texturing because it'd be covered by the smoke and the steam and stuff. These little canyons here looked really good, though. Really, really good. And then there's a little guy behind it. Not really impressive. Does it have an open crater, though? Kind of. We didn't fly over the top of it. And there's the water mountain. That's the one that had the massive landslide that crushed the Spanish city that was out here. The original capital city. And then we came over Guatemala City here. The final volcano is down here. Pacaya, which looks like it's also blown a good chunk of itself off, doesn't it? So this is the one that's just kind of been sputtering a little bit. Erupted fairly recently, but wasn't all that impressive. But you can tell it's had some action because the trees are missing off the top there. So that's it, guys. That's our Volcano Alley Tour. Really cool flight. I think definitely worthy to take in 2024. Let me know if you guys enjoy it. And please, let me know if you find any other spots. If it is good, if it makes the cut, we'll load it up. You'll be entered in our quarterly flight plan competition, which will just be awesome. Learned all kinds of things, and I hope you did too. I can't wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.